Introduction to the artist. Elijah Walker was born in the small, rural town of Millstone, a place where opportunities were as scarce as the town's fading storefronts. His family lived in a modest, weather-worn house on the outskirts of town. Elijah was the youngest of 3 children, and from an early age, his world was filled with challenges. His father worked tirelessly as a factory laborer, while his mother juggled multiple jobs as a cleaner to keep the family afloat. Money was always tight, and conversations at the dinner table often revolved around how to make ends meet. Despite the hardships, Elijah possessed an innate curiosity. He would spend hours staring at the colors of the sunset or the textures of the old brick buildings in town. Unlike other kids, who played sports or roughhoused in the fields, Elijah spent his time observing the world around him. His fascination with colors, shapes, and patterns set him apart, though it also made him the target of ridicule among his peers. Discovery of passion. Elijah's love for art began when he was just 6 years old. One rainy afternoon, while his siblings played board games and his parents fretted over bills, Elijah found a box of discarded crayons in a pile of second-hand donations. The box contained only a handful of broken crayons, their wrappers peeled away, but to Elijah, they were treasures. With an old scrap of cardboard, he began to draw. His first creation was a rudimentary sketch of the family's worn-out sofa, but to Elijah, it was a masterpiece. As he grew older, his passion for art deepened. He would save every penny he earned from doing odd jobs around town to buy pencils and sketchpads. Without formal instruction, he taught himself to draw by imitating magazine photos, street signs, and even the peeling paint patterns on Millstone's derelict buildings. Over time, his skills evolved, and his art began to capture the raw beauty of life in his struggling town, the resilience in his mother's eyes, the determination of his father's hands, and the hope that lingered beneath the town's decay. Art became Elijah's escape from the harsh realities of life. It gave him purpose and a voice when words failed. However, it also brought its own set of challenges. In a community where survival took precedence over creativity, his passion was often dismissed as a frivolity. Teachers suggested he focus on practical skills, while peers teased him for wasting time on something they believed would never amount to anything. Dreams and challenges. By the time Elijah reached high school, his talent was undeniable. His sketches and paintings had evolved into powerful pieces that told stories of hardship, love, and resilience. His art was raw and evocative, often drawing attention from those who happened to see it. Yet, Elijah struggled to find a platform that would recognize his work. Despite his efforts, his applications to local art fairs were often rejected. Gallery owners in nearby cities refused to meet with him, citing a lack of experience or dismissing his work outright. Elijah's small-town background and lack of formal training became barriers he couldn't easily overcome. Still, he refused to give up. He spent countless nights in his makeshift studio, a corner of the family garage, working by the dim light of a single bulb. Every brushstroke and pencil mark carried his dreams and determination. One of Elijah's teachers, Mrs. Green, recognized his talent and became one of his few supporters. She encouraged him to apply to a prestigious art school in the city, even offering to write his recommendation letter. Elijah worked tirelessly on his portfolio, pouring his heart into every piece. When the rejection letter arrived, it crushed him, but it didn't extinguish his fire. "I'll show them," he whispered to himself, gripping his paintbrush tightly. "One day, they'll see what I can do." Meeting the gallery owner. At the age of 22, Elijah decided to take a bold step. He packed up his best pieces and traveled to the nearest city, determined to showcase his work to someone who could help him break into the art world. After days of searching, he found himself standing outside Leighton Gallery, one of the most exclusive galleries in the region. Its pristine white walls and expansive glass windows displayed works from renowned artists, intimidating yet alluring. Inside, the gallery was bustling with well-dressed patrons and art enthusiasts. Elijah, wearing his best second-hand jacket, felt out of place but refused to let his nerves get the better of him. He approached the receptionist and asked to speak with the gallery owner, Martha Leighton. After some hesitation, the receptionist reluctantly agreed to inform Martha of his request. Martha Layton was a woman of sharp edges and sharper words. With her designer heels clicking against the marble floor, she approached Elijah with an air of impatience. She barely glanced at the portfolio he held in his trembling hands. "You're an artist?" she asked, her tone dripping with skepticism. Before Elijah could answer, she flipped through his portfolio with disinterest. "These are quaint," she said, her lips curling into a smirk. "But this isn't the kind of work we showcase here." Elijah tried to explain his vision, his passion, and the stories behind his pieces, but Martha cut him off. "Look," she said, handing the portfolio back to him, "art is about pedigree, connections, and refinement. Your work lacks polish. Maybe try a community fair. This isn't your arena." Her words stung like a slap to the face. As Elijah left the gallery, clutching his rejected portfolio, he could hear Martha laughing with a colleague. "Can you believe he thought he belonged here?" she said, her voice echoing in his mind long after he left. Turning point. Elijah returned home that evening feeling defeated. He sat in his garage, staring at his artwork, wondering if he had been foolish to believe he could succeed. But as the hours passed, his despair turned into resolve. Martha's words had ignited something within him, a burning desire to prove her, and everyone who doubted him, wrong. He began working with a new intensity, channeling his pain, anger, and hope into his art. His pieces became bolder, more vibrant, and deeply emotional. He started documenting his journey on social media, sharing not just his art but the stories behind it. Slowly, his work began to attract attention from people who saw the beauty and authenticity in his creations. Elijah realized that his worth wasn't determined by the approval of a gatekeeper like Martha. His art wasn't just about validation, it was about expression, resilience, and inspiring others who, like him, had been told they didn't belong. As he put the finishing touches on a new piece, a vivid painting of a cracked but blooming flower, he smiled to himself. "This is just the beginning," he whispered, his heart filled with determination. Elijah Walker was ready to rise, no matter how long it took. Journey of hard work. Elijah Walker's determination to prove himself became the driving force behind his relentless work ethic. Every day, he spent hours in his makeshift studio, surrounded by worn paintbrushes, nearly empty tubes of paint, and a vision that refused to be dimmed. Each piece he created carried the weight of his struggles, hopes, and experiences. The themes of resilience, injustice, and the beauty found in imperfection became the hallmark of his work. Elijah's art transformed during this period. He began experimenting with unconventional materials, using scraps of wood, discarded metal, and even broken glass from his neighborhood to add depth and texture to his creations. His paintings grew larger and more intricate, blending vivid colors with haunting undertones. The raw emotion in his work resonated deeply with anyone who saw it, though his audience remained limited to those in his small town. To make ends meet, Elijah took on part-time work as a handyman, often using his earnings to buy more art supplies. Despite the challenges, he never stopped creating. He began posting his artwork online, sharing the stories behind each piece. His captions were raw and heartfelt, reflecting his journey and the emotions that fueled his creativity. Although his posts initially garnered little attention, Elijah remained persistent, believing that his time would come. A chance encounter. One sunny afternoon, the annual Millstone Community Fair brought a rare buzz to the quiet town. Elijah had rented a small booth at the fair, displaying his work on makeshift stands made from old pallets. The booth was modest compared to others, but the art spoke for itself. Passers-by were drawn to the vibrant, soulful pieces that seemed to tell stories of triumph over adversity. Among the fair's visitors was Lydia Carmichael, an art enthusiast and collector from a major city, who was visiting Millstone to reconnect with her roots. Dressed casually, she wandered through the fair, her discerning eye scanning for anything unique. When she stumbled upon Elijah's booth, she froze. The pieces before her were unlike anything she had seen. One painting, in particular, captured her attention, a depiction of a lone tree standing tall in a barren, storm-ravaged landscape, its branches reaching toward a fiery sunset. The emotions in the painting were palpable: hope amidst despair, strength amidst adversity. Lydia felt a lump in her throat as she stared at the piece. "This is extraordinary," she said, turning to Elijah. "Who created this?" "I did," Elijah replied, his voice tinged with both pride and nervousness. Lydia spent the next hour exploring his work, asking questions about his process, inspiration, and journey. By the time she left, she had purchased 3 of his paintings, promising to show them to her network of art collectors. Elijah was cautiously optimistic, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was significant. Virality and demand. True to her word, Lydia shared Elijah's work on her social media platforms, tagging influential friends and writing a heartfelt post about discovering a hidden gem in Millstone. Within days, the post began to gain traction, reaching art enthusiasts, critics, and celebrities alike. People were captivated not just by Elijah's art, but by his story, the young artist from a small town who poured his soul into his creations despite facing countless obstacles. One particular piece, titled "Bloom Through the Cracks," went viral after a popular celebrity shared it on their page, calling it the most moving piece of art I've seen in years. The painting depicted a delicate flower breaking through a concrete sidewalk, its petals vibrant against the gray backdrop. Its message of resilience struck a chord with millions. Requests for commissions and purchases flooded Elijah's inbox. Art critics began writing about his work, praising his ability to capture raw emotion and universal truths. Social media was abuzz with discussions about the undiscovered genius who had emerged seemingly overnight. Media spotlight. As Elijah's popularity grew, so did the demand for his presence. He was invited to appear on morning shows, podcasts, and art panels. Reporters visited his modest studio, documenting the story of the self-taught artist who had defied the odds. Though overwhelmed by the sudden attention, Elijah remained humble, often crediting his struggles and upbringing as the driving forces behind his success. His first major exhibition was held in a prominent gallery in the city, organized by Lydia and her connections. The event was a resounding success, drawing art lovers, critics, and collectors from all over. Each piece in the exhibition told a chapter of Elijah's life, from his early struggles to his journey of self-discovery. Attendees were moved to tears, and many left the gallery with a newfound appreciation for the power of art to convey emotion and inspire change. Elijah's ability to connect with people through his work set him apart in an industry often criticized for its exclusivity. He became a voice for underrepresented artists, using his platform to advocate for inclusivity and diversity in the art world. His interviews were filled with anecdotes about his humble beginnings, the people who had supported him, and his unwavering belief in the transformative power of creativity. The auction. The pinnacle of Elijah's rise came when one of his most iconic pieces, "The Weight of the World," was selected for a prestigious art auction. The painting depicted a young boy balancing a globe on his back, his expression one of quiet determination. The piece was a metaphor for Elijah's own life, the struggles he had faced and the strength he had found within himself. The auction was held in an opulent venue, attended by some of the wealthiest art collectors in the world. As the bidding began, Elijah watched nervously from the sidelines, his heart pounding in his chest. The bids climbed higher and higher, exceeding everyone's expectations. When the gavel finally fell, the painting had sold for an astonishing $2.5 million. The room erupted in applause, and Elijah found himself surrounded by admirers congratulating him on his achievement. For a moment, he felt a wave of disbelief. Just a few years ago, he had been mocked and dismissed by people who couldn't see the value in his work. Now, his art was being celebrated on the grandest stage. That night, as he sat alone in his hotel room, Elijah reflected on his journey. The success was exhilarating, but what mattered most to him was the impact his work was having on people's lives. He had received countless messages from fans who said his art had given them hope, strength, and a sense of connection. Elijah knew his journey was far from over. The world had finally recognized his talent, but he wanted to do more. He wanted to use his success to uplift others, just as Lydia and a handful of supporters had done for him. With this newfound recognition, Elijah Walker was ready to leave an indelible mark on the art world, and beyond. Returning to the gallery. It had been several years since Elijah Walker had last stepped foot in Millstone. Time had transformed the boy who once struggled to have his art seen into a man whose work was sought after by collectors, critics, and fans worldwide. With accolades, wealth, and a growing legacy under his belt, Elijah decided it was time to revisit a chapter of his past that had once stung him deeply, the gallery where he had been mocked and dismissed. The decision wasn't an easy one. For weeks, Elijah debated whether it was worth reopening old wounds. Yet, deep down, he knew it wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about closure, about seeing how far he had come. Armed with this clarity, he made the trip back to the city where Leighton Gallery still stood, its pristine facade as imposing as he remembered. Dressed sharply in a tailored suit, Elijah walked through the gallery's glass doors with quiet confidence. The space was much the same, white walls, polished floors, and an air of exclusivity that reminded Elijah of how small and out of place he had felt all those years ago. This time, however, he wasn't carrying a battered portfolio or wearing the weight of insecurity. He was there not as a hopeful artist, but as an established name in the art world. The unexpected encounter. Martha Leighton, the gallery's owner, was standing near the reception desk when Elijah walked in. Time had etched faint lines across her face, but her demeanor was as poised and authoritative as ever. She was talking animatedly with a client, her polished smile a reminder of the sharp dismissal Elijah had once endured. Martha didn't recognize him at first. She glanced at him briefly, likely assuming he was another potential buyer or a visitor to her latest exhibition. Elijah took his time, walking through the gallery and observing the pieces on display. Many were by established artists, their names printed in bold on plaques beside their work. As he studied the art, he couldn't help but remember the sting of her words years ago, "This isn't your arena." It wasn't long before Martha approached him. Her practiced charm was on full display. "Welcome to Leighton Gallery," she said warmly. "Are you enjoying the exhibition? We have some truly remarkable pieces this month." Elijah turned to face her, his expression calm but unreadable. "It's an impressive collection," he replied. "Though I noticed something, it seems my work is missing." Martha blinked, caught off guard. "Oh? And you are?" she asked, her tone still polite but tinged with curiosity. "Elijah Walker," he said, his name hanging in the air like a challenge. For a moment, Martha's smile faltered as recognition dawned. She blinked, her sharp eyes scanning his face and then widening as the pieces clicked into place. The name alone would have been enough. Elijah Walker was now a household name in the art world. "Elijah," she murmured, her voice trailing off. A nervous laugh escaped her lips. "Well, this is unexpected." Elijah's reflection. As Martha stumbled through an attempt at small talk, Elijah couldn't help but reflect on the last time they had met. He remembered standing in this very gallery, clutching his portfolio with hope, only to have it crushed under the weight of her ridicule. He remembered the way she had dismissed him without even trying to understand his work or his story. But now, as he stood before her, the sting of that memory felt distant. Instead of anger, he felt a sense of triumph, not because he wanted revenge, but because he had proven to himself that he didn't need validation from people like Martha to succeed. Her dismissal had fueled his drive, and for that, he was oddly grateful. "I wasn't sure you'd remember me," Elijah said, his tone measured. "It's been a while." Martha let out a forced laugh, the mask of confidence slipping just slightly. "Of course I remember you. How could I forget? And I must say, your success is extraordinary. Truly extraordinary. It's inspiring to see how far you've come." Elijah said nothing, letting her words hang in the air. He could see the gears turning in her mind as she tried to recalibrate her approach. "A test of character. You know," Martha continued, her tone shifting to one of eager enthusiasm, "I've followed your career closely. Your work is remarkable, absolutely remarkable. In fact, I'd love the opportunity to feature your pieces here at Leighton Gallery. I think it would be a perfect fit. Elijah raised an eyebrow, his expression cool and unflinching. Is that so? That's interesting, considering what you said to me the last time I was here. Martha stiffened slightly, her polished veneer cracking. I don't recall exactly what I said, she hedged, but I assure you, I've always admired talent. If I said something out of turn, it certainly wasn't personal. It wasn't personal? Elijah echoed, his voice calm but firm. You dismissed me without a second thought. You told me this wasn't my arena. You didn't even bother to see me as a person, let alone an artist. Martha opened her mouth to respond, but Elijah held up a hand. It's fine, he said. I'm not here to hold a grudge or demand an apology. I'm here because I wanted to see this place one more time, not as someone seeking your approval, but as someone who no longer needs it. Martha looked at him, her expression a mixture of discomfort and forced graciousness. Elijah, I truly regret if I ever underestimated you. I hope you'll consider my offer. Your work deserves to be showcased in a place like this. Poised exit. Elijah gave her a small, polite smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. I appreciate the offer, but I think I'll pass. I have my own gallery now, one that's dedicated to supporting artists who might not fit the mold you built here. He took a step back, glancing around the gallery one last time. Good luck, Martha. I hope this place continues to thrive. But for me, this chapter is closed. With that, Elijah turned and walked out, leaving Martha standing in stunned silence. As he stepped into the sunlight, he felt a profound sense of peace. He had faced his past, confronted the person who had once made him feel small, and walked away with his dignity intact. For Elijah, it wasn't about revenge or validation. It was about owning his story, celebrating his journey, and staying true to the principles that had guided him from the very beginning. As he walked away from the gallery, he felt lighter, freer, ready to continue building a legacy that truly mattered, starting his own gallery. Elijah Walker's rise to fame and fortune was not just a personal victory, it was a turning point that illuminated the broader inequities in the art world. As Elijah traveled to galleries and exhibitions across the globe, he became acutely aware of the barriers that still prevented many talented, underrepresented artists from breaking into the industry. These barriers, he realized, were the same ones that had almost crushed his own dreams. It was then that he decided to create something different, a gallery that would give others the opportunities he had fought so hard to earn. With his wealth and influence, Elijah purchased a historic but dilapidated building in the heart of a thriving city's art district. The building, once a warehouse, was transformed into a space that defied convention. Instead of the cold, sterile atmosphere of traditional galleries, Elijah's space was vibrant and welcoming, with walls painted in bold colors and wide, open areas that encouraged collaboration and conversation. He named it the Bloom Collective, a nod to his now famous painting Bloom Through the Cracks. The gallery was dedicated to showcasing work from artists who came from marginalized communities or unconventional backgrounds. Each exhibition was curated to tell a story, highlighting the struggles, triumphs, and unique perspectives of the featured artists. Elijah made it a point to ensure that every artist received not just exposure, but fair compensation for their work. Nurturing talent. Elijah's commitment to supporting new talent extended far beyond providing a space to display their art. He launched mentorship programs, working directly with young artists to help them refine their skills, navigate the complexities of the art world, and build their confidence. Many of these artists came from backgrounds similar to his own, rural towns, low-income neighborhoods, or communities where art was seen as a luxury rather than a viable career. Elijah's mentorship sessions were both rigorous and heartfelt. He would sit with the artists in the gallery's communal studio space, sharing stories from his own journey and offering guidance on everything from technique to marketing. For Elijah, it wasn't just about teaching, it was about empowering these artists to believe in their worth and their ability to succeed. One of his protégés, a young painter named Amina, credited Elijah with changing her life. "I didn't think someone like me could ever make it," she said during one of the gallery's opening nights. "But Elijah saw me. He saw my work and told me it mattered. That changed everything." Over time, the Bloom Collective became known as a launchpad for groundbreaking talent. Several artists who got their start at the gallery went on to achieve national and international recognition, but they never forgot the man who had given them their first chance. Community impact. Elijah's vision for the Bloom Collective extended beyond the gallery walls. He believed that art had the power to transform not just individuals, but entire communities. To that end, he organized workshops, lectures, and events that brought people from all walks of life into the space. These events were free to the public, ensuring accessibility for everyone. One of the most popular programs was the gallery's Community Canvas Initiative, where residents were invited to collaborate on large-scale murals that celebrated their shared history and culture. These murals, displayed in public spaces throughout the city, became symbols of unity and pride. Elijah also partnered with local schools, bringing in artists to teach classes and mentor students. He funded scholarships for young artists, ensuring that financial hardship would never stand in the way of talent and ambition. For Elijah, this work was deeply personal. Every child he helped reminded him of the boy he had once been, dreaming of a future that felt impossibly far away. Recognition and awards. The impact of Elijah's work did not go unnoticed. Within a few years, the Bloom Collective became a household name in the art world, celebrated not just for its exhibitions but for its mission of inclusivity and empowerment. Elijah received numerous awards for his contributions to art and social change, including a prestigious humanitarian award that recognized his efforts to uplift marginalized voices. At the award ceremony, Elijah stood on stage, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "This isn't just about me," he said. "It's about every artist who has ever been told they don't belong. It's about creating a world where art is for everyone, not just the privileged few. I stand here tonight because people believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. And now, it's my turn to pass that on." Elijah's humility and authenticity endeared him to people everywhere. Despite his fame, he remained approachable and grounded, always reminding others that his success was built on the support and kindness of those who had helped him along the way. A meaningful gesture. Though Elijah had achieved international acclaim, his heart never strayed far from his roots. He often thought of Millstone, the small town where his journey began. While the town had been a source of pain and struggle, it had also shaped him in profound ways. He wanted to give back, to ensure that the next generation of kids growing up there would have opportunities he never did. Using a portion of his wealth, Elijah funded several major initiatives in Millstone. He renovated the town's rundown community center, transforming it into a vibrant space filled with art supplies, music equipment, and workshops for creative expression. He also established an annual art fair, ensuring that local artists had a platform to showcase their work. One of Elijah's most significant projects was the creation of the Millstone Arts Academy, a nonprofit organization that provided free art education to children and teens. The academy offered classes in painting, sculpture, photography, and more, as well as mentorship programs and scholarships for those who wished to pursue careers in the arts. The impact of these initiatives was immediate and profound. Kids who had never held a paintbrush before discovered their talent and passion. Families who had once dismissed art as impractical began to see its value as a tool for expression and empowerment. Millstone, once a forgotten town, began to thrive with creativity and hope. A legacy of empowerment. As the years went by, Elijah's gallery and community projects continued to grow, touching countless lives. He often reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point, the rejection, the pain, and the moments of doubt that had once seemed insurmountable. Yet, through it all, he had persevered, turning his struggles into strength and his dreams into reality. Elijah's legacy was not just about the art he created, but about the lives he transformed. Through the Bloom Collective and his work in Millstone, he proved that art could be a force for change, a beacon of hope for those who dared to dream. And though Elijah's name would go down in history as one of the greats, he remained, at his core, the boy from Millstone who believed in the power of a single paintbrush to change the world. Martha's struggle. For years, Martha Layton had been a fixture in the art world. Her gallery, with its pristine white walls and carefully curated exhibitions, had once been the pinnacle of prestige. But times had changed. The art world was evolving, and the exclusivity that Martha had once prided herself on was now seen as outdated and exclusionary. Her refusal to embrace new voices and her dismissive attitude toward emerging artists had tarnished her reputation. Word spread among collectors and critics about her treatment of artists, including her infamous dismissal of Elijah Walker. As Elijah's star rose, his story became well known, a tale of resilience and triumph against the odds. Though he never publicly named Martha, insiders in the art world knew who he was referring to when he mentioned gatekeepers who had doubted him. This revelation, combined with the growing shift toward inclusivity in the art world, left Martha's gallery struggling to stay relevant. Attendance at her exhibitions dwindled, and collectors began to favor galleries that championed diversity and fresh perspectives. Financial pressures mounted, and Martha found herself at a crossroads. For the first time in her career, she felt the weight of her decisions. She had spent years dismissing artists who didn't fit her narrow definition of worthy, and now she was paying the price. A twist of fate. Desperate and out of options, Martha began to consider reaching out to the very person she had once mocked, Elijah Walker. It wasn't an easy decision. Martha was a proud woman, and asking for help from someone she had wronged felt like an admission of failure. But as she sat alone in her office, surrounded by unsold artwork and unpaid bills, she realized she had no choice. She composed a letter, her hands trembling as she typed. In it, she acknowledged her past behavior and the impact it had likely had on Elijah. She expressed her admiration for his success and asked if he would be willing to meet with her. "I understand if you don't want to," she wrote. "But I believe I have much to learn from you. If you're willing to give me the chance, I'd like to support your mission and contribute in any way I can." When she hit send, Martha felt a mix of dread and hope. She wasn't sure if Elijah would even read her message, let alone respond. Days passed, and she began to lose hope. Then, one morning, her phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Elijah. Elijah's response. Elijah had been surprised to receive Martha's message. Part of him had wanted to ignore it, to leave her in the past where she belonged. But as he read her words, he sensed something genuine, a vulnerability that hadn't been there before. He thought back to his own journey, the people who had extended kindness and forgiveness when he least expected it. If they hadn't believed in him, where would he be? Elijah decided to meet with Martha, not out of obligation, but out of a desire to show her what was possible when pride was set aside for growth. They agreed to meet at the Bloom Collective, a place that had become a symbol of everything Elijah stood for. When Martha arrived, she was struck by the warmth of the gallery. The walls were adorned with vibrant, powerful works by artists from diverse backgrounds. The space buzzed with energy and creativity, a stark contrast to the rigid atmosphere of her own gallery. Elijah greeted her with a calm smile. "Martha," he said, extending his hand. "It's been a long time." She shook his hand, her voice trembling slightly. "It has. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." They sat in the gallery's lounge, surrounded by works that told stories of struggle, resilience, and triumph. Martha hesitated, unsure of how to begin. Finally, she said, "Elijah, I owe you an apology. I was wrong to dismiss you all those years ago. I see now how narrow-minded I was, and I'm truly sorry for the way I treated you." Elijah nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I appreciate your apology. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong." Martha took a deep breath. "I've been reflecting a lot on my actions and the harm they've caused. I want to change, Elijah. I want to be part of something bigger than myself, something meaningful. That's why I reached out. I was hoping I could learn from you, or maybe even contribute to your mission." An unexpected partnership. Elijah studied her for a moment, sensing the sincerity in her words. He knew that offering her a chance wouldn't erase the past, but it could create a path forward, a way to turn her mistakes into something positive. I believe in second chances, Elijah said. But if you want to work with me, it can't just be about saving your reputation. It has to be about making a real commitment to change. Supporting underrepresented artists isn't just a trend, it's a responsibility. Martha nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I understand. I'm ready to do the work, Elijah. Whatever it takes. Elijah extended an invitation for Martha to join the Bloom Collective as a consultant and advocate for emerging artists. Her role would be to use her connections and experience to elevate voices that had long been ignored. It was a humbling offer for someone who had once been at the top of the art world, but Martha accepted it with gratitude. A full circle moment. Together, Elijah and Martha began working on a grand exhibition titled Bridges, a celebration of art that transcended boundaries and brought people together. The exhibition featured works from artists of all backgrounds, with a focus on themes of redemption, growth, and unity. Martha threw herself into the project, meeting with artists, listening to their stories, and using her platform to amplify their voices. The exhibition's opening night was a resounding success. Critics and collectors marveled at the depth and diversity of the work on display. Elijah and Martha stood side by side, welcoming guests and sharing the vision behind Bridges. For Martha, it was a moment of redemption, a chance to use her influence for good. For Elijah, it was proof that even the most broken relationships could be mended with understanding and grace. As the night drew to a close, Martha turned to Elijah. "Thank you for believing in me," she said. "You didn't have to, but you did. I'll never forget that." Elijah smiled. "We all deserve the chance to grow. Just promise me one thing, don't stop now. There's still so much work to be done." And with that, the two of them continued their journey, united by a shared purpose. Together, they proved that art had the power to heal, to connect, and to transform even the most unlikely of partnerships. Their story, like the art they championed, became a testament to the beauty of resilience, redemption, and hope.